I give the floor to the representative of Algeria.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to thank Mr. Adedeji Ebo for his briefing, and I also listened carefully to Mr. George Zamweli. Madam President, Algeria on several occasions has warned about the predominance of escalation and confrontation in the crisis in Ukraine. We've also insisted that this kind of logic will only serve to exacerbate tensions and risks plunging the whole region into a spiral of conflict and unending crises. The situation on the ground is getting worse day by day and continues to lead to considerable losses in terms of life and great suffering amongst the populations in Ukraine and Russia. To that we must add the destruction to the civilian infrastructure, including residential buildings and hospitals and other essential structures. Moreover, the flow of weapons and munitions towards the conflict zone don't just worsen the situation, but take us further away from a possible peaceful political process that would make it possible to find a peaceful outcome to this conflict. In this regard, today, I'd like to stress the following 3 points. First of all, Algeria renews states again its commitment against these clashes, and we are against all non-respect for international law. Once again, we call upon the two parties to show restraint and to avoid a fresh escalation. We also call upon both parties to respect their commitments internationally and to place the protection of civilians at the heart of their priorities. The targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure is unacceptable, whatever the pretext might be. It is something that is also prohibited under international humanitarian law. Secondly, in the light of this tense situation on the ground, we reiterate our deep concern with regard to the use of deadly and destructive weapons and munitions increasingly in the conflict zone, in Ukrainian as well as in Russian territory. We also would warn against the possibility for these weapons falling into the hands of terrorist and criminal groups and extremist groups, thus helping them to reinforce their ability to carry out hostile activities, and the victims are usually civilians without defense. Thirdly, we once again urge a constructive dialogue that will leave aside geopolitical tensions and polarization. It's important that we give more space to diplomacy when it comes to this conflict, something which requires genuine willingness on the part of both parties and greater efforts to be made internationally in order to facilitate dialogue that will make it possible to find a peaceful solution to this conflict. In conclusion, Madam President, we are firmly convinced that just and lasting peace, based on the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter and taking into account the legitimate security concerns of all the parties, is the key to finding a solution to this conflict and putting an end to the war. I thank you. I thank the representative of Algeria.